All right. Okay, I think we're good to get started. My name is Sidh, Deputy Administrative Officer with Baltimore County. Welcome to the third meeting of our Hart-Miller Island Community Benefits Agreement Steering Committee. Just a quick overview of the agenda before we jump in. We're going to start just doing as we've done in other meetings, quick summary of public comments received. We'll then jump into discussing key terms that would roll into a community benefits agreement. We'll then have 10 minutes set aside for open dialogue amongst the committee members to discuss next steps. And then we'll conclude with 15 minutes for public comment. And so I'll start doing a quick summary of comments that we've received. Didn't receive a ton of email over the last 2 weeks. And of course, all the emails that we have received are posted on our website. Of the emails we did receive one from the Bullies Quarters Volunteer Fire Department. We're requesting funding to support water safety infrastructure and emergency response capability. And they detailed their interest in funding supporting the construction of an annex to their fire station as the headquarters of Marine Emergency Team 21, an aquatic rescue training facility, a rescue swimmer fitness center, and indoor storage for response vessels to be ready 365 days a year. A second note that we received, and really the only other note that we received, came in from the Baltimore Bird Club, who again raised some general concerns about the environmental impacts of placement on Hart-Miller Island. And the issues that they talked about were kind of the desire to have a plan to preserve bird and bird habitats during the dredging process, the time that would be added to implement the closure plan for the North Cell of Hart-Miller Island, and the need for observation areas to allow for viewing of areas where birds congregate. So I'll say one thing just to clarify our scope, and I've done this at the beginning of a few of our meetings. This steering committee in Northern County is the actual approver of the placement of dredge material at Hart-Miller Island. That responsibility rests with the Maryland Department of the Environment. And so that's just a point I want to clarify in terms of our role in negotiating community benefits agreement that's related to permitting placement, but not actually as being the approver and the considerer of environmental issues associated with placement.
But that could affect the CPA. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, I want to turn it over to Richard very quickly, or Maryland Department of Natural Resources. Because I know we got your letter and there was some email back and forth this morning. So, Richard, if you have anything you want to comment on.
Oh, well, actually, I think for the community benefits agreement, I can provide clarification to some of the questions, but I think some of the questions should come from the community. And I feel free to reply as best as I can.
Sure.
So I did read the, Joe, I did read your comments, but for everybody, I'm sorry, I don't know how you want to do it, Mr. Mayor. Just because it's officially for the committee, right?
Yeah.
But you had lots of questions. Do you want to present those questions and then we can respond to them, or is the committee fine with what we have?
We have your letter. We also have public comment at the end. I mean, it might be better if we get into that dialogue at the end of the meeting. Happy to do it. I mean, we can address it quickly now.
The only concern, if I can make it really short,
Sure.
is that we're concerned about the existing birds there right now, and making sure that they're taken care of, and that if there's possibility and probability of protecting some wetland habitat for them, we would really want to do that. And then, of course, we want to make sure that after it's all said and done, that we're going to get all that habitat back and forth. But we want to see firm plans. And if community benefit money can be used to do any of these things, that's a possibility. That's why I'm bringing it up now, because it could affect the community benefit amounts and what the community benefit is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly in terms of, benefits to bird habitats and the observation areas, that's the type of thing a community benefits agreement can fund.
So I think, Joe, we work backwards. I think what has been presented from the state and also actually mostly from TPA, last meeting, PPA agreed to, I don't want to speak to the parent, but I think you agreed to backstop anything going to the state, make sure the state park happens. If that's the case, and actively pervaded by PPA also, that the option B that was recommended, could, the concept of option B could continue. It may not be exactly, because there is going to be 4.2 million required to it, but that concept of having 1/3 ponds, 1/3 highland and upland, 1/3 transitional/marsh is what I believe is going to be in the fishery. With that said, that contract is not in place yet, but I do believe that TPA is forthright in that, and DNR certainly would like to see it stay. So eventually, that is what the plan is. As far as, the day after we start dredging, or the day that actually TPA starts dredging with their contractor, going through HMI, the Holland that DNR is going to manage with MBSD into the contract. That will begin to diminish to almost totally negate all habitat that exists in the North Zone.
As part of the plan.
As the project is currently planned. But I will say that, there's nothing signed yet. So there's nothing really, things could change, but as we are visioning it right now, and from the guidance that we have, we're going to do EPA is going to do hydraulic placement of material from this scow onto Hart-Miller Island. And that's essentially going to fill up north cell of Hart-Miller Island. Think of it as a bowl right now with 8 million cubic yards of volume, and they're going to put, or everybody's going to put 8 million plus yards of, million cubic yards of material into that bowl. That bowl is going to fill up. However, current plan is 3 years of dredge placement. Over those 3 years of dredge placement, you're going to have monthly water almost to the tippy top of the lakes.
If we go that way.
If you go that way, but that is the current plan.
Because there's other ways to do it. Right? It's front-loaded, it might cost more, but there's other ways to do it, and the CDA money can be used to help do the other ways.
Correct.
There's other places to put the dirt.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that, maybe only put 4 million cubic of every
Right.
cubic yard,
So,
million cubic yard.
so DNR and the state, by the legislation, our challenge is to reopen the islands. I can't speak to where else it could happen, how else it could happen, but we're going to open the island for the
Right.
because that we're told we have to do the abstention.
Okay, but you're talking about the CDA and well,
Yes, sir.
got to be, cognizant of that. You might have to modify what, awesome.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Could you elaborate or either maybe more summarize your reference D, Plan D? I think a lot of people are questioning, what is Plan D? Could you briefly summarize?
But yeah, this goes back a decade and a half plus, Paul. Paul, actually, you may be more, speak to it.
When the proposal to close, so to speak, or stop the dredging, there was at that point plans for it to become ready for state park. Plan D, there were several plans we talked about. Final Plan D, and actually there's 3 options. I think 3 options basically would allow for the placement of materials, may not be dredge material. Okay, for material, that would probably would be dredge in a way that would make it most advantageous for the DNR to then make that state park. And actually, I saw there's so many emails, there was, I think, a document, I know there is a document, that wasn't shared, I can share that document. It's a PowerPoint actually presented. I think part of the March, last March is the March COC minutes, which I think are public. I think they'll be in this website.
The only reason I bring it up is in reference to the topic that we're having with the partners. I looked at a 2004 document that was generated by the DNR plan. And it clearly stated, okay, that there was to be a heavy emphasis, okay, on bird sanctuary, wildlife habitat. It was also supposed to be something about the natural water system, that would have items, I guess, control, okay, influence of water in and out. I said something about the pump. And another one
I
was,
think
of
that
course,
I think that was the intergovernmental agreement, the IGA. I just read it. That's what you just sent out.
I just sent that out, but this is actually something that's from 2004. Believe it or not. I'll send that out
Agreement
too.
was,
And the other one that was focused was obviously usage freedom beings, for passive usage. But I just wanted to share with you that that's,
if you're referring to the IGA, that was an agreement between DNR, MPA, and NES. And that was an agreement of what they were going to do without any money
right.
to prepare the island return. And how they were, that was their agreement, but they got to do as much as they could without those Mount Fridge. They actually needed a million cubic yards to actually implement option D.
Right, because the document I sent out today, which was that 21 intergovernmental agreement between MES, DNR, and of course, okay, MPA, I think even had a conclusion about the birds and whatnot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just saying this bird theme seems to be continuous from the very beginning. And I'm not carrying water for the bird man, but I'm just trying to share with you that
What's your email?
this isn't something that's just been generated out of nowhere. It seems like it was actually part of DNR's plan from the very beginning to make it some kind of wildlife habitat, according to what I'm reading.
So
Thanks, I just wanted to make sure.
can I just say, so, real quick, there was 4 different plans presented. Plan B was to move material around at a cost of approximately 47 million, what we said years and years ago. Plan B, which we discussed, and that was tabled in favor of Plan D years and years ago, was to add an additional, I'm going to say 1.25 million yards to what was in there to create the wetlands, so you wouldn't have to move the material around and spend 47 million. The benefit of that would be if material became available, one, you might have to buy the material, but with the Trade Point project, the material pretty much came available.
Correct.
And the thought when this discussion started was that maybe they could eliminate the size of their offshore proposed site by 25%. Put that 25% to create that upland in the gut. Now, it sounds like that isn't being discussed, as part of this conversation with Rio. I know what I'm hearing is the preferred is to just put it all into Hart Miller. We talked about that. But as far as, preserving some of the habitat that's available, that 1.25 million, may be able to be mechanically put into the island without all that sort of.
Maybe
all that
even accelerating still.
So maybe it would be a combination of 2 sites.
Right.
That we could really get the bigger benefit of the bang of the bus.
Interesting sense. Interesting.
So what I'm hearing then is that DNR was actually possibly looking for additional
Not
material
BNE.
placed for the conclusion and finishing of the habitat.
Yes,
Whereas right now, we don't have that material in place. Is that correct?
correct, but I think we really have to make sure that we're tracking apples to apples here. Reopening the island changes a lot. Frankly, it changes almost everything. So we need
You
to
mean opening the north south?
I'm sorry, yes, correct. Opening the north and south, right? Change for additional volume changes a lot. All those plans for phase 5, what was coming there, not more stuff in the future. All that stuff. So new plans need to be reevaluated from a specific standpoint. But I agree with Aaron, and CPA, sorry, that I think the goal is to go back and keep it about 1/3 pond, 1/3 upland, 1/3 transitional, which was the goal that was pressed forth by the multi-environmental.
Right, and that's been documented well.
Right.
But was a point of clarification, how much, you mentioned a couple 100,000 cubic yards that the county wanted to put in.
I think the county was still waffling on that, or I'm sorry, waffle's not the regular site. Deciding on what to go with that county.
Yeah, the county is going through an assessment of local waterways. at most, we're talking about 250,000 cubic yards.
Instead
But
of,
that's up, but what's that?
instead of the 1.2 that Fran was talking about.
I mean, the 1.2 is nothing that that's different.
I know there are different numbers. One's 1.2.
No, the 1.2 was if they were going to go out to be prior to anybody else reopening North Side.
Right, what's the quarter billion?
The quarter million is big.
This is for local waterway.
Understood.
Very,
So that's the clean, I'm sorry, because I was on the original dredge committee to get Baltimore County in the recreational
Okay.
dredging business. That's going over clean, this maintenance dredging of North Point, Jones, Sukley, Lynch, Green Hill, those. So that might be a nice material because that's going to be done mechanically, which I think you were alluding to. So it's going to come up with a bucket, it's coming out, it goes in, and it would go. So it might give you some of your material to fast track your site, your burning site.
Wouldn't be as much.
Yeah, because you're not gonna have all that slurry. Let's say unload it and make it into soup again. I don't know, maybe we talked about maybe that could be done mechanically.
Right. Current also expanded our story also. So because there possibility exists in Canada, but I would encourage both Baltimore County and EPA to talk to the dredging contractors, but that's who will upload it. And from our historical experience, volumes we're talking about, you exceed the time and capacity that you have with a dredge to mechanically on the
If you do it all mechanical. But it could be partial.
right. So I do want to get us back onto the topic of the
Sorry.
community benefits agreement. Richard, thank you for the insight, and I appreciate that. So we do have a lengthy agenda that we need to get through today, and what I talked about in the agenda was kind of hitting key terms to really start to figure out what is actually going to populate the agreement that we've been discussing. And so the four key terms that I have on the agenda for discussion purposes are, first, the monitoring and oversight of project selection. There's different ways to do that. I know the first meeting we talked about, or actually approved, a 50% set aside of the pot of funding to go directly to improvements at Hart Miller Island. The second is discussing criteria for project selection that could be incorporated into an agreement. Third is a payment schedule for when payments will be made due. And the last key term, of course, is the sum of money that will support the agreement. So the first item that we have up on the agenda is the monitoring and oversight of project selection. And so the last meeting, like I referenced, we talked about setting aside 50% of funding for Hart Miller Island. And we also discussed that just based on the amount of time that we have to get to an agreement, which needs to be done by the end of the year, there isn't enough time to do things like do cost estimates by project, prioritize projects, and allocate funds by project like we would during the budget process. Just by way of comparison, the county goes through a budget process annually. It is a 12-month exercise. So that is something that we can contemplate in this agreement, but we will not get to in this agreement. But I do think it's important to talk about how we make project funding decisions at a later date. And I think logically, because we've set aside half of the money for the island, that there would be two parallel processes that we would go through. And so one, and we can start with Hart Miller Island itself. The legislation talks about the Citizens Oversight Committee having monitoring and oversight over kind of the disbursement and allocation of funding. And so that, I think, is one thing that we should talk about. First, I did send around to the committee members sections or draft language that could be incorporated into a future agreement. First, related to Hart Miller Island, and then second, we talked about standing up a standing committee to oversee the other half of the funding that would go elsewhere than Hart Miller Island. So maybe we should pick it up first with the oversight of the funding that goes to Hart Miller Island, and the first topic would be the Citizens Oversight Committee and their role in oversight.
I'll jump, yeah, it's okay, I'll jump in to take that. This is nothing new to us. I mean, we purposely established the Friends of Hart Miller 3 years ago in an effort to plan for the island to become a state park. So we're kind of, and we've been pushing for the island to be closed for that purpose. And we've been talking amongst ourselves, formally and informally, in terms of what's needed there. I think the document does capture that, this document does capture that. And I believe the thing that we would like to do is, and this is what the Friends have considered, is developing a strategic plan. So we can then put some meat and costs to this, okay, and then work that strategic plan. The strategic plan would include pretty much everybody, as any community, to really have a clear plan, because it's gonna take years to do this. We don't even know where some of these amenities could be, whether north, south, south, south. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's kind of what we would want to do. We'd want to be able to, because we're not going to get the money, according to the agreement, no money will be dispersed until after the permitting process, which will take a year or so. The schedule of releasing funds is 3 years or more. So we would like that fund, that money being put in and down in our trust. And we can talk about the details so we can collect interest on it in the meantime, so we can, you know, we can use that purely to support the development of that state park. This would, in somewhat, you can say, the supplement or support DNR's effort. So this would have to be done in conjunction with DNR. We're being a little, and when I talked with Josh, I said, you know, it's kind of, it could be kind of a bold saying you're going to build something in your house. Okay. But I think we're well on this, when we'll position ourselves with our partners, the Aquarian and Joe, to establish a plan for us. I mean, we invite people to be, to be part of it. So I don't know if anyone had anything.
But again, that's not something that's gonna be decided
No.
fully right now, or, the strategic plan.
I think the only thing that we want to decide for the purposes of this agreement, this is just me speaking, is just that the Hart Miller Island Citizens Oversight Committee has a role in monitoring it. I think the details.
In the draft of the community benefit agreement, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Current draft, it was just
The
shared.
language we just
The language is, we can tweak it a little bit,
yeah.
but I think in the general principle, I think I'm in agreement with the draft of CBO.
Anyone else? Scott?
Restate what we're trying to talk about.
All right, so the first portion of what we're trying to talk about is management and oversight of the funding. And the funding is now split in two after the vote at the last meeting. And so we're specifically talking about management and oversight of the funding that will support improvements at Harbin.
So you're saying we're going to have an independent committee of a group of people, or?
I thought that was going to an endowment.
So,
COC, that would be the role of the COC.
so it would, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
for the funding that's dedicated to benefits at Hart Miller Island, that would be under the monitoring and oversight of the Citizens Oversight Committee.
Okay, so it's going to be a separate group. We have a fund, and then we have money going to Hart Miller Island, and Hart Miller Island's going to look at Hart Miller Island's money because they're getting half the money.
50%.
That's half the money,
The
right?
Citizens Oversight.
50%.
Citizens Oversight is going to be
Correct.
the overseers of the disbursement of that money, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to award, okay, whatever project. So if we need a nature center, okay, or if we need a pier, or if we need, I don't know, you know, Dixie cups, whatever they need, okay, you guys are going to be the ones that make that decision, correct? And that's your bailiwick, and that'll be where you guys maintain your authority. Whereas there'll be another portion of the money, which is another half, whatever that might be.
Correct.
Okay, and that's going to be a separate group of people.
That's right.
Okay, so now we've established there's going to be two groups of people.
Two groups of people.
Right. So now we've established the first group, which is basically going to be Hart Miller Island, COC. So now we have to derive who's going to be the community.
Correct. And the one, I wanted to come back to Josh, your point, in reference to the endowment. I think we're open to that, and the language that's drafted leaves that open. The endowment doesn't exist yet, and so we're going to give ourselves flexibility, and that might be a theme of the agreement, but that's contemplated, but not.
Well, let's go back to that. It was floated that we were going to go with the, I guess it was the district, okay, paradigm, where we had District 5, District 7, we had a county executive sitting over here, where we're going to elect or choose two people from one district, two people from another district, and of course, a county executive. then we have this other one where we just bring everything together, and say we're just going to have a group that oversees the entire quote unquote vicinity and the appropriations of that money.
Yeah,
So
so,
we have a couple alternatives here.
right, so what's been drafted for the committee's consideration is a standing committee that would go through, just like what Paul talked about, the Hartman Island, a budget process where, project estimates are developed, projects are prioritized, and a budget is finalized at some point. The composition of that committee as drafted right now, open for discussion, of course, is 3 executive appointments, 2 District 5 appointments, 2 District 7.
Right. And I personally, think that that's a little bit weighted on the county executive side, because we have 4 individuals here that are at the legislative level. We got 3, that are at the executive level. And I personally think that we should have more representation on the legislative side, because our legislators really represent the interests of that community, whereas the executive represents the overall interests of all community members in Baltimore County. And being this is something that is a vicinity there of Southeast Baltimore County, whatnot, et cetera, I think we should seriously consider looking at weighting this group heavier towards the legislatures, maybe having 3 and 3, and the county executive having 1, because he's almost there at veto power at 3. He's almost there at veto power at 3.
So, and I do want to open it up for the group,
Could you go through the, again?
Yes. For the 7. Yeah, so 3 county executive appointments, 2 District 5, 2 District 7. The intent behind that, similar to kind of the way things were drawn up for the Hartman Island section, there's a reference to it being done in conjunction with the state and the Department of Natural Resources, specifically because DNR is the owner of the island. It's similar from a project implementation perspective. If there are projects that the county administration has to deliver, that's the reason for the slight weighting. But again, you have a majority of that committee appointed by council. So that's the way we're kind of splitting things. But I'll open it up and go, Josh.
I agree with Scott. 3, 3, and 3. Make it equal and simple.
You want to give them all parity, huh?
What do you mean?
They're all equal.
Yeah, why not?
No, I'm not
I
opposing.
mean,
I'm
it
saying
doesn't,
that's-
it doesn't weigh the county executive, doesn't weigh the legislative.
So
side.
we're going to go from,
It makes it equal.
we had originally started with 5.
3, 2, and 2.
Oh, no, it's
So it'd be 3,
9.
3, and 3, and it'd be 9.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
going to
it'd
go
be
9.
9 instead of 7, right?
3, 3, and 3. I mean, that's pretty balanced. That way we don't run into a condition where we have a certain group. We were human beings, we all cluster and we have our own groups. What I'm worried about is in the future, wherever that future is, we have a situation where some people agree more with other people. And then what happens is we lose the representation that these people are there for the communities that they represent. So I'm looking for the greatest amount of checks and balances, if you will, in this group. These guys are on their own. They're done. But I'm looking for this because we have to represent the people that are going to get the money, and everybody's going to be watching. Why is it that this one got it and this one didn't get it? And we need to explain that to the people that are going to be looking at us as community leaders.
I mean, we could have the discussion too of maybe the county executive gets 1.
I think that's what Scott was saying.
That's what I said. It'd be 3 and 3 and 1.
I'm sure you're not in agreement on that from that side of
I'm
things.
here to support.
Because we have greater control of our legislator here. We have much more greater control of our district councilman than we do the county executive. We have more ability to reach out to him. You see where I'm going here? This
Yeah,
is my.
And something either
Granted,
way,
it's my- is-
something
is-
either way that would be fair to be put into this is that those appointments have to come from those areas.
You mean the districts? Right, of course. That goes without saying. That's,
Right.
yes.
That should be in there either way.
Including the county executive.
Councilman Crandall had raised before about it's Hart Miller's in that District 7. So is there input, Doug?
I just think it's more reflective of the community to have more people from the district on this ballot than from the county.
I agree. The councilman knows his backyard, and the councilman on this side of town knows his backyard. So I think that that makes more sense, because these are backyard issues, not countywide issues.
I think that's fair. The only thing I'd point out is, again, at some point feasibility has to bake into it. And so you know,
Well, explain when you say
Yeah.
feasibility. What are you trying to articulate with the word feasibility?
how is the project that is contemplated going to get executed? Who's going to do the executing of the project?
That's an agency issue. Agencies do that. The county executive doesn't do that. That's an agency thing. That's
Agency.
DNR or our own DEPRM or whatnot like that. There's a whole process we go through. We turn around and say, this is a project we want. You tell us the money that we need to do it. Then we send it through the ladder, go through all the processes of getting the permits, all that kind of stuff. And at the end, we get what we want. Is that how it's supposed to work? Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're talking so fast. That's why I'm not, I can't keep up.
I'm sorry.
no.
I've just done this so many times because I've built so many different things.
No, I mean, what I would say to that is, I think we want to be able to avoid a situation where there are projects that are funded and
I didn't touch it.
projects that are funded and selected by a committee that can't be implemented for whatever reason. And so I want to make sure that feasibility is considered on the front.
Again, the term feasibility.
Yeah,
I can draw the definition up on the Google. What do you mean by feasibility? Because you're an attorney. So you have different definitions for different words. So what are we talking about? We say, how is it, what would non-feasible mean? What would non-feasible
a
mean?
project that can't be constructed for whatever reason.
So why is it that the county executive has to have 3 individuals in order to make that determination?
And why does the county, I mean, that's part of the reason why you give the county executive appointments to ensure that what we're putting into what's essentially going to be a draft budget document is something that actually can be delivered. We're not setting false expectations. for
See, I thought that that was the responsibility of the individuals as part of the group, let's say COC. It's your responsibility to make sure that when you present whatever it is you want funding, to make sure that it was feasible from the jump start instead of sending stuff that's not feasible to the county for review.
Well, I think I'd be talking to DNR about what's feasible,
Yeah, and so DNR as the owner of the island,
because they own the island.
Hold, you're going to appropriate the money for the 20 million. Let's say you get 20 million bucks and you got your wish list of everything you want to do. So you say, let's say I want a nature center. How does the process work? Now, how do we get the nature center there? You say, I want a nature center.
I think we'd have to get DNR's involvement with that and to start a process where we could start.
So now we got to go to the state. See, now this isn't a county issue. Now we got another agency involved that's beyond the state.
Right, for any changes.
Now let's talk about Hart Miller Island. This is where the money's coming from.
Well, they own the island.
For that first 50%.
I mean,
Anything would have to be approved by DNR. It'd have to be to the standards that they expect.
I think we're getting outside of the conversation we were having with just the group, but I think what he's saying about the feasibility is more than likely that we're advisory. This still has to go to the council and the county executive.
And that's why we have the agencies. They got the engineers and all that. I get that. What I'm saying is that it should, somebody comes to me and says, listen, I want you to build me a house. I want you to build the roof first. I want you to build the second floor second, and I want to build the darn first floor second. I want you to foundation on the top. It's not feasible, and I know it. These men are intelligent. He got an education. He's very smart. He knows everything. He knows what's feasible, what's not feasible.
I'm not saying that Paul doesn't know.
months. I wouldn't be here.
No, look, again, this was kind of what I put together to mirror the way we drafted language for Hart Miller Island.
Yeah.
It's like ultimately, it is a committee decision. I'm, leaning on you guys to advise. That was the logic behind it, the way it was written. That.
It does help, but I still think 3-3-1 or 3-3-3.
3 should be fine, equal, I would think. 9-member group,
Sure.
and they have to be from those areas.
All 9,
Yeah,
all 9 have.
yeah.
Can I interject one quick point? While we compared to the last Hart Miller Island agreement, the big difference there was it's all public money. In this particular case, it's not all public money. This is, we use the word endowment or trust, but it's money coming from another source outside the public. And it's to be divvied up by the community. Where I think everybody, when you think that through, the old agreements and old process, public and public. There's public all around. Federal public money, state public money, some county public. We're talking about now private sector money to use a public asset.
a public asset and use that impacts the community. From that frame of reference, I mean, definitely to where the argument to me is going. It is more congressional districts, people feet on the ground, and not the county executive office. And just when we have 1 point, private sector money coming to community benefits. It is not public county money using county resources, brand. Somebody's got to put a bow on how some of this administrative money is going to be set up. But as far as the process and where the votes belong, it belongs on where the feet hit the ground. That's in the district.
Well, that's what I say. I think it should be 331, not 333.
Appreciate, just a housekeeping item, we do have 15 minutes set aside at the end of the meeting for public
Understood,
comment.
but I think very.
Do want to keep
on
us
that point.
kind of
Private sector money.
focus on the-
Public.
All right. And the reasons are outlined by it.
Yes.
Just the fact, should we have 2 separate groups, 1 for 5 and 1 for 7? Because in 7, we have no idea what you need, or how you want to use it. Likewise, you have no idea of us. Could there be 2 committees and maybe 5 each? And that way we control the money within our pot, but we already talked about would it be 25, and then we control the money ourselves, where we know exactly what we need and we have the best interest.
That is why I made that suggestion the last time, is that I looked at all this and I thought this was the most fair, equitable way to do this versus actually picking out the vicinity.
Well, now we're saying geographically, it's going to be 5 and 7.
I thought simplifying it smaller down, like when you put together a group of 9 people, right? And, you guys, like, let's see, there's going to be a discussion at some point, say, about a project in North Point, right? Why should anybody in the other district have any say in what you guys want to do on your side of it? And the same thing vice versa.
I'm 100% in agreement with
That was the
that.
main purpose
Yeah.
of trying to get it smaller and simplify it. You know what I mean? That the people in those groups would be in the control then to be able to do their own area. That was the idea behind that last meeting.
So we're having 3
just
from
probably-
5,
I probably
3 from
didn't
7, and
articulate
3
it
from the
very
county.
There would actually be a separate breakdown. So District 5 would have, say, 3 people, District 7 would have 3 people, 5, whatever. But that way, District 7 people would control the expenditure of money within District 7, and District 5 people would have nothing to do with that, and vice versa.
And where does the county executive's interest come into these 2 subgroups?
You appoint 1 to each, and each of the district councilmen could appoint 2 to each, or 4 to each, something like that.
Yeah, that could work too.
2 and 1.
And then we still have the 3 that
We don't have any of them.
oh, so the county executive is going to be inside the actual subgroup thing. You'll have his representation in the subgroup.
I'm hearing this for the first time, so that's what I'm understanding here.
Yeah, so now we're breaking it down into that we have 2 subgroups, okay, which are autonomous in the decision-making process within their own districts. We'll have representation, whatever the district councilman chooses, and we'll have representation from the county executive. Now it's just a mere number, who many, from what legislation and executive branch now.
I think the challenge with that is all the money's being drawn out of one pot. So decisions in District 5 would affect decisions in District 7. And it's coming out of one pot. Now, I know you and
And
Les.
that's why I suggested of splitting the pot again to the 2 sides of it so that there wouldn't be that conflict.
And I know we heard from the council member at the last meeting of concerns about that split between the community.
All fairness to the councilman, you're going to hear from both of them because they want the money. That's what's, it's a long story short of it.
Well, I think Todd said flexibility, and he was worried about overlap, from my recollection. Those were the words that stuck in my head. Flexibility, and do we have this project that overlaps that project, and how will we commingle the monies between the 2 districts in order to achieve?
Come together.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Now, my question is I'm just not that versed on the projects that we have already arrived at to say which ones overlap.
Well, and to be clear, we haven't arrived at projects. We've gotten suggestions of projects, but project selection for many reasons, including the time it would take to actually do a full project.
I'm just addressing what Todd said.
Yeah.
Because, he's making a suggestion
Yeah.
for, what did I say it was, overlap and
Flexibility.
and flexibility. But we're not even at that point because you said we haven't identified currently what possibly could overlap. So maybe we got to just move forward and drop back later and just go with this for the time being and say, we're going to break the two groups up. It'll be fifth, seventh, okay? We'll have representation from the county executive, representation from the county councilman, and that way we have more autonomy with the disbursement of the money in the projects.
There's always an option at a later date to do subgroups within five.
Oh, yeah, but this is,
That's
I'm not stoning anything. I'm just
Yeah, sure.
having a robust debate here.
Either way, the overlapping, I don't see how that really plays into it.
Significant.
Well, think about, I mean, you're gonna have people from Middle River that go to a park in you all's area, and the same thing, like a better example of that is the volunteer firefighters. You know, North Point needs money for a boat, Holy
Yes.
Quarters is wanting some money too. But they service the entire area, but it's everything is, at some point overlapped, because they're all recreational style things. I mean, if I take my. boat, I
Agreed,
can
but they're in
go down-
different locations.
Yeah.
So we do have Bowleys and we do have North Point.
Right.
So we can clearly say that geographically, they do serve, okay, different, populations,
Sure.
even though they do overlap.
And they're not necessarily bound by council.
Right.
So that,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there is
It
play
was more for
involved in
it was
this.
more for like what you were talking about of creating the group. And you know what I mean, in that area that I thought better fit that way.
I agree with you. I'm looking for the autonomy of the districts to make their own decisions is what I'm looking for. We have a little bit of oversight from the county executive, so there's, the best whatever results. But we really have, okay, is the county councilman for those districts, okay, as the pivot point for everything. He's going to select, if there's a problem with this community or individual who are business going to be in it, they can go to the county councilman. And he can kind of, if you will, meet out the problems.
and so I do want to keep. as-
I know, I'm just-
to the-
Well, this is a big thing, because we're talking about millions of dollars here.
I mean, maybe one thing we could vote on is just the Hart and Rhode Island component. Folks,
Or that the COC would be making the decision on it. Decisions on the,
Make a motion that COC oversees the decision-making on the plans and
I'll second that.
expenditure of the
take it to a vote.
Yeah.
Frank,
Yay.
Ken, Gloria.
Yay.
Yes. Oh. Dale.
Aye.
Josh, Joey, unanimous. So the COC will oversee the endowment fund.
And then on the other half of the money, do you guys feel like there's consensus on the composition of that group?
Again, I'm going to restate 3, 3, and 1. That's what I'm putting on the table. 3 from the district, and 1 from the from the executive. That's what if anybody disagrees, argue with me.
Do you want to do that, or you want to split it like you were talking about before? Actually.
Hold.
make a motion
Now this
everybody
is a
gets-
separate issue because now we're saying we're going to split the districts, which I think is cool. But then I'm talking drilling down into what is the composition of the group going to be in the district. So I'm saying split it and make it 3, 3, and 1 with the groups. So we'll have 3 people for the district, 1 person from the county executive's office, but we have 2 groups, which would be a total of 8. Yeah. Think about that.
Seven, right?
Well, if you want to call it total, but really it's 3 people that Todd will choose, 1 person that Johnny will choose, okay, for each district, but a total between the combining 2 of them will be 8. But it really doesn't matter because each district is going to make,
Must be doing the amount, yeah.
Seven, right? 3, 3, and 1, 7.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is
3, 3, and 2.
3 from Todd and 1 from Johnny in 7, 3 from Marks
Okay.
and 1 from Johnny, okay, in 5, 4 and 4. And what I'm saying is we split it
And 2
Okay.
separate groups.
in 2 separate
I follow
groups.
you.
So you making that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make it a motion.
I'll second.
Want to say them, restate the motion?
The motion is that we agree that there will be 2 separate groups one from the 5th, one from the 7th districts of Baltimore County, and that they will be comprised of 3 individuals appointed by each councilman, Todd Crandall and David Marks, and it will be one per group selected by the county executive, Johnny O. Did that make sense?
So 2 groups of
2 groups of 4. Correct. From each district. 3 from the councilman, 1 from the county executive.
Do we have a second or any questions?
I was just restating the motion.
Yeah.
All of it.
You want a discussion or?
A little bit.
No.
Is the county executive going to allow this to go this way? Has he made any?
I mean, I'm so.
I was looking at the look in your face and it told me that there might be a problem, so I'm just
No,
wondering.
I'm not saying that. I mean, I think,
He ain't gonna worry about it being.
I think we're open to kind of the middle of the body on this. I think 4 per group might be tough if there are matters that need to be voted on, but also there's just kind of like even numbers for odd numbers. And then, again, it's coming out of one pot of money, and somebody referenced like projects that can impact both districts like favorably. So there might need to be some overlap or some meetings, which is why I think if you did one committee and then just subcommittees, it might make more sense. That way you'd have a full structure, kind of bring ideas back and make sure it's consistent.
And I was gonna bring it,
So I kind of agree with that.
I think I do too.
Yeah.
It gives an opportunity to bounce ideas off
Right,
of,
because-
get an outside view.
We really, in my opinion, you really can't say split, well, 50% we know is going to Hartville. But the other split between 2 districts, when we don't know what the projects are. It may be a project that overlaps.
We're not talking about the money at all.
Right, but
Yes,
that
this
does
is not
come into
about the money.
play, that does come into play if we separate it out and don't have a larger group. So we need to know as a whole, and I agree with them, and then have the subcommittees out, because you know where there's any overlap or a project that will support both districts. So we need to really think about that, and I think, we should be that hasty on it. And it doesn't hurt, and keep in mind that if we do it that way, we can still come back, and that gives us some flexibility to modify anything as we go along. So we need to be careful what we're voting on and how we are confining ourselves for the future.
So do we want to have further discussion or table it?
Well, hold it, for clarity, she said we're gonna have 1 group. Is that correct?
I agree with what's saying.
So what I said, and
Yes.
it wasn't meant to be.
so make it this.
Speech member, but it would be one body that would have subcommittees that would focus on this issue. So let's take 333 tomorrow. Right? So you would have one body of 9, and then you would have subcommittees, which could consist of 335 and 327. To do a deeper dive into potential proposals in each of those districts. But it would come back to a larger body to ensure the biggest benefit out of the one pot of money that would support all of them. If that makes sense.
So now we're gonna have this group, and then we're gonna have another group, and then that group is gonna have subgroups, is what I'm hearing now. That's the organizational structure you're presenting.
That is what I.
Now, who is going to be the subgroups?
You're talking about this group?
Who's gonna appoint the subgroups?
The 2 subgroups make up the one whole group, is what
The
you're saying.
2 subgroups make up the one.
Yeah, so not this
Not
group.
all the.
No, not.
A subgroup set up in District 5 and then District 7 would be part of a full 9, is what he's saying.
So let's take the 333 suggestion that we put out there. A couple of
So
months ago.
I'm even confused now.
It was 9 at one point, and then we went to the 8. So we would be giving an executive,
I'm fearful of the county executive having too much power, okay, in the decision-making process of our communities and our districts. And I think that decision-making power should be rested in my councilman, not at the county executive's office. And if we don't put the right people, the number of right people on there, it's possible that could be, I hate to say usurped, but it could certainly be a bad deal.
Yeah, I don't,
That's not.
that's not what I'm,
That's
I'm
not-
not, this isn't.
I'm worried about
Yeah.
the county. Great, I love it, but I'm worried about the districts too.
Yeah.
And I want the districts, because that's where the communities lie, in the district, not in Towson.
This does keep it in the districts.
Yeah.
It does.
I'm not worried about it. I'm just, like I said, I'm gonna stop my rant. But I'm just telling you, make sure that the county executive does not wind up with power over these committees, is all I gotta say.
So, Scott, was that a motion? Did I hear a
There
motion?
is, so there is a motion on, yeah,
Motion is 4-4.
that's the current.
I second the motion. If there's enough discussion.
Is there still discussion?
This is.
There's got
Or
a
a call for a
motion,
vote.
first motion on. Right, we have them restate that.
Like that's probably was a lot of discussion. Yeah.
Again, I'm gonna restate my motion, but my motion was, is we had two separate groups, okay, from the 5th and the 7th, that were comprised, okay, of 3 people that were appointed by the county, by the district councilman. 1 person was appointed by the county executive, and they would be autonomous and handle their own districts. There wouldn't be any of this overlapping and all this other business with the possibility of overlapping
Was
projects.
there a second to the motion?
Yeah, he seconded it. And we're in discussion on the motion, so we have to take.
I call for discussion then. And to put it to a vote. I would open my Robert's rules and warrant.
That's right.
Yeah.
Karen, we don't even know what we're voting.
That's why I asked for it to be restated, and that's, but we have to vote on it regardless at this point, because there's.
What don't you understand?
What are we voting? The
We're voting-
composition of the 2 committees?
He said, we're going to have a group that's going to oversee Hart Miller Island. We said, we agree to that. Now what we're voting on is who is going to oversee the money for the communities.
And so.
That's already done, Scott.
What we're saying is we're going to have 2 different groups, one from the 5th and one from the 7th.
I thought it was projects and not money.
Pardon me?
How's the group going to oversee the money when the money is not in the group? We need to identify the projects.
They're going to function exactly the same way that the oversight committee will function with Hart Miller Island, identically.
I
Identically,
can't say.
identically,
I can't,
okay, identically.
We can't
I
say
can't
that.
say.
But we're,
The
the
procedures will be the same.
subcommittees are gonna be picking the projects. Yeah, we're not gonna be picking the projects.
Right.
We're saying who is gonna be picking those projects. We're trying to come up with the
The
numbers.
composition of the groups.
Right. And I'm saying that we, as community leaders, should make sure that that authority is vested in our district leadership, not in our executive
You
leadership.
have it in the 3, it seems like to me, Scott, you have it in a 3-to-1 ratio.
Does everyone understand the motion that's on the table?
You have
Do you
three-
understand what I'm saying now?
Does anyone
3
not
people from
understand?
Todd, 1 person from Johnny. Those 2 will be 5th, 7th, okay? They take care of 7th as far as proposing what projects. We'll propose whatever it goes to Todd, and then that goes up the ladder, okay, yada, 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 and it either happens or it doesn't at the county level. Am I going too fast again?
Does everyone understand the motion that's on the table?
The motion is for 2 separate individual groups, not including, like group that would combine the 2 groups.
Correct.
Okay, just.
At this point.
2 separate groups. That's the motion on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, in other words, there won't be another group on top of these 2 groups. It'll just be 2 groups.
I,
Well, hold on, when you say subcommittees, speak up, I want to hear
When you
it.
have subcommittees, you're going to still have people working that's going to be working on the actual projects. So that's the process of the groups, our group.
Well, that's what we're deciding now, because people are voting, I mean, they're sending in their suggestions. We're accumulating all these projects that people want. They're going to be all listed and enumerated. So that when this all becomes reality, we'll be able to say group 7, group 5, this is the list of things you're going to do, and this is how we're going to approach it. And then you can, I guess, move forward with, which ones you're going to do first and et cetera, et cetera.
I'd like to put it to a vote, but first I'd like to say I agree with Gloria. But in the sense that there's a commitment made to the integration, and collaboration amongst the committees, including Hart Miller Island. But I think first it's better to have a structure, and within that structure, we can do other things.
Because I could reverse the argument and say, you know what? I think that we should have.
The motion on the table is just.
Now, I'm going to continue with the debate here, discussion. I could say, you know what? I disagree with having Hart and Miller have their own group. I could say, I think we should all have one group that sees everything.
End of the discussion. So the motion on the table
Okay.
is to decide to have two separate groups.
Go ahead. 3, 3, and 1.
Three and one for each district for 5 and 7.
Right.
So the vote, Frank,
My favorite.
Brian,
Yes.
Gloria, what was that?
Hey,
Nay, okay,
yeah, yes.
okay, Sam? Yeah, okay, so it's.
The gays carry it.
Yes. It was 8-1.
I make a motion that to be established a structure of collaboration between all three groups. At a later time, that
The
structure.
5th, the 7th, and COC.
Correct, because there'll be overlaps with everything, but in the future, that there will be a mechanism. I don't know, it's a group, whether it's a committee, but there'll be a mechanism for collaboration around projects.
Collaboration though, Hal, you've got to give some details to that of how you want to do that. I mean, you could just say collaboration. If it says that in the agreement, it means nothing. It means we talk.
Before
Like
any,
it's not a structure.
before any final decisions made, it's shared with the other two groups.
But is there a vote then? Well, you're putting. a
That's what I
motion
mean
on
is
that.
like there has to be some type of structure if that's what you're asking for.
So it's not an approval, but it's consultation, which is also in the
Consultation.
bill.
Okay, consultation,
Okay.
But there's no voting, so one group can't say, no, we don't like COCs
correct.
or.
The autonomy is to the group, the autonomy is to the council people, but there's some level of collaboration, some level of consultation, with the other groups. Has to, because there could also be, heaven forbid, they share money.
No, I agree. We just I think we should be clear making these things because somebody's going to be looking at them, but again, going,
There's going
okay, how do I,
It's
how
going
do I
to
go?
have access from some place to go to the island. I'm not sure what district it'll be in. But there might be some discussion around where that would be. Maybe both districts. With some community benefits shared, but it's hypothetical. It is the.
Well, I think it's a good point to be made, is like you said, just wants to make sure that things are transparent, is what I'm basically hearing.
Right. And there's,
That's basically what it is. Transparency is, I think, what I'm really vying for.
Okay, I'm just gonna have.
Okay, so we got the vote done on that. It's settled.
make a motion that
I'll
there's some
second
Okay.
collaborative structure that prior to any decision being made, the all groups would be consulted. That's all.
Consulted is the key word.
Without-
Okay, and
just
Josh is-
consult.
Right.
Just consult.
There's no veto power, no voting power, just a simply consultation.
Okay.
Gloria, we're gonna do this. What do you think?
I can go along with it.
Okay.
Does that
All right,
make
so
you
we got a
feel better
second?
about the first one?
Absolutely.
We're good. Everybody's happy.
Okay. Any further discussion or vote? Okay, Frank?
Yay.
Right, I am.
Yay.
Okay,
Yeah.
unanimous.
I owe it all to Samir. Thanks. Samir.
It may not feel.
Samir's.
We're still talking to each other.
I think that a lot of people are voicing their opinions because we don't know who the county executive is going to be when this money actually gets here.
Yeah, no.
There's a lot of, uncertainties.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's a long road.
We want to keep us moving. That was
Yeah.
the first topic. But we,
We'll be here for breakfast.
So the second item, and I think I did send around draft language for this as well, is,
I think address, I'm sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
Questions at the end.
yes,
We've been answering
We will-
questions
we have a 15-minute public comment period at the end.
at the end, so write down your question.
Relevant to the agenda item. So
So you can ask the question at the end so we can get some of this done, okay?
It has to keep flowing.
we're in a steering committee right now. I can talk. So the second item on the agenda is project selection criteria. So Just some background on this, I did send around some language for consideration to committees. We had talked a bit at the last meeting about a map to define a term in the legislation, HB 343, that describes communities in the vicinity. I've had separate conversations with many of you individually, and, I think there's been a little bit of a shift in opinion amongst many of you that maybe it's better to kind of establish some criteria for project selection, but not to confine it directly by map at this point. I think part of the logic behind that is, we just established two separate bodies. Essentially, out of it. Projects one, Hart and Miller Island Citizens Oversight Committee, we will control a defined boundary that is Hart and Miller Island. The other group is focused specifically on mainland projects. And so I think that group that's focused on mainland projects may be better to kind of evaluate whether or not there is a need for a map or whether or not it's a project that's happening. In terms of criteria, we all have handouts, but the basic gist of the criteria are three basic things. It's proximity to the island, the source of dredging, the relationship between the project, which is the container terminal, and the project that's being considered as a benefit. And even within that, there's an emphasis on environmental sustainability, enhancement of recreational opportunities, and then projects that support kind of the infrastructure, whether it's public safety or, roads and transportation, needed to access and enjoy environmental and recreational projects. And the last thing is just, kind of the concept of equitable distribution of funds throughout the area. So I think maybe we start by discussing map versus criteria, and then we can talk more in detail about that. And I'll stop if anyone wants to. Sound good?
I've looked at this and I'll be honest with you, I don't like this project selection criteria one bit and how it was worded out. It's to pull money away from what was intended in the state legislation. If you want to go to the 5 mile vicinity map, I'm fine with that. But some of this stuff in here, several different times here, it's mentioned of the vicinity being Coke Point. It is specifically left out of the state legislation, and I think it was left out for a reason.
Could you repeat that a little bit? I didn't hear you then, wasn't it?
Several times in this project selection criteria, it mentions Coke Point next to Hart Miller Island.
Right.
That is not what the state legislation said at all. It says the vicinity of Hart Miller Island.
Right.
So we should base a map then off the vicinity of Hart Miller Island, if that's what you guys want to do. But I do not think I don't even think this is right to try to change. What you're asking to do is change the state legislation that already passed. And I got a feeling they might have a big problem with it when the assembly starts again.
It is draft language, it's meant to be broad, but feel free to discuss it.
But what was left out of there was the vicinity. So let's establish the vicinity.
Starting with Hart Miller Island as the epicenter.
Sure. I think didn't you have a map now, Frank?
I mean, the committee, COC has a 5 mile.
The legislation from '09 established a 5 mile radius, right?
That's to me the simplest way at this point.
I will say the 5 mile radius is related to placement of dredge material.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we follow the 5 mile vicinity map.
From what point?
Laid
From
out
what
the-
point?
What point you say?
From the shore or from the center?
Point where the dredge materials being placed.
That's over
That
5
sound all
miles.
right? The point where the dredge material is being placed, does that sound right or? Is there any
Well,
problem with that?
Well, that's all.
again, I know I'm splitting hairs here, but we're defining a discrete distance. Okay, and this is going to be legislated into law.
Didn't you have it centered on the dam or the,
Cross Lake, I think it's the center of them.
okay, does that work?
Pardon?
Does that work, centered on the cross dam?
I could, Brandon, I could be wrong. I thought that was part of the legislation.
What's that?
I thought that when they established the bill that passed in '09, okay, that limited dikes being created within the 5 mile radius. I thought the legislation then created that map.
I remember when we were talking about establishing a new site on Cove Point, there were different criteria talking about.
Okay.
It could have been from the edge of the aisle
Okay.
or from the cross site. I don't know if it was specifically drawn out because it did move that line, that circle, depending on where you were.
So
It's
it's,
1,100
Not very
acres.
significant.
yeah, so it's 1,100 acres. I mean, it's I guess it would be the north point of the island would be, as opposed to the south point. We're talking about a distance of about,
2 miles, a mile. It's a mile, the island's 2 by 1.
The map that I was sent from MPA, the center was on the cross site. That's what that's what that.
the
map-
center of the island.
That's the motion I'll make then.
Okay.
From the center of the cross lake, a 5-mile vicinity of Hart Miller.
I can-
Do we have a
Is that
picture?
what's-
Do,
I have a question. Was that based on when the law was established? Was that the site line? Because I know when that was established and when Senator Stone put that in legislation, it was because the state was considering developing another site at Sowers Point without community input. And so that was to protect the Sowers Point, good turn station community, bottom line.
Yeah, that's what
And
Paul
what
was saying.
I
It
thought,
was- and it-
and then what I saw with the map now, it's a different criteria. It doesn't, it doesn't include us. So that's why I want to know where to establish lines.
Yeah, I don't have the map with me.
The center point of the cross, cross dike.
It was
Because
on-
I think that's actually a little bit farther south than
It
the
is
center of
a
the island.
If you just take Google Earth, we've already done it. You can go from the edge of Hart Millen up to Penwood Channel, and that's about where it touches if you want to do that. And if you move it to the center, then it comes out to the middle of Old Road Bay. That's what you're drawing a circle.
if this was a lesser decision, I would go with a verbal description of what we're doing. But because of the weight of this decision, I believe we need to have actually graphic representation that we can see what our eyes, what a circle or a square, whatever it is, and we can say we agree to this map, or this map. And that's what I think we should do before we do
This
this.
is the same one that we've all been sent.
I don't have it in front of me. And maybe you see something I don't see.
I'm not
I don't know what's in his head.
sure if that was the guideline that was used when the law was established.
I think we need to have a picture of what we're voting on this one here.
Because I know, because I was around at the beginning of.
You could be right. They weren't thinking community benefits at the time. So it might have been a different, it was dredged.
It was
material.
dredged
Yeah,
material.
so.
See, that's-
And it was to prevent the state without community input, because this is how the harbor team was established, because the pushback from the communities without having any input of what the state was going to do. And that's how that community how all the communities begin to have input. But the bottom line, Senator Stone, because I was around at that time as well. Senator Stone put the law and put it in legislative in order to prevent the state from arbitrarily creating a facility at Sowers Point. And that was within 5 miles radius. So what I saw on the map that's been presented here, it doesn't reflect that. That's what I'm concerned about.
Did you understand what she said?
A little bit,
Could you explain it to me?
not completely, no.
Okay.
Because you need a map in front of you.
Thank you.
To understand.
Find out
So the
whether-
community benefit map is completely different from Senator Stone's dredge.
Yeah.
Dredge.
This is the one that was distributed to the community.
And that doesn't reflect what the 5 miles radius, the footprint of station outside of 5.
As a 5-mile radius point, I don't think it includes Turner Station.
That's right. That's what the law, when the law was enacted.
That's about, that state cross lake.
That's about the process.
Sure.
I think, I'm not the author of this, I think Samari's not.
Yeah, so we need.
I think,
Go back to verify that.
He shifted that from.
We need to go back and verify.
I know one of them did not.
Yeah. So we had put together, I put together a number of maps for the last meeting 2 weeks ago. As, material to discuss. There's one version has up here, there's 2 points of interest, Moses Point, Park Road, radii, except 20, and 5 members, 2 miles, 5 miles. And then another one was just from the center of Rundle around. And it was based on base layer of maps census tracts. So it was That version of that, there's some big chart, big blue charters. Because it-
Talking about the water track map.
portion of the census tract could be within 5 miles, but include the entire census tract. So, but I think there's a lot of nuances in that mapping. Lots to put like- So we can put together the more options, ratio. Hopefully that's helpful.
His census tract makes sense. Terminations.
I mean, the other one that we could use that simplifies it maybe it was the waterfront track.
Yeah, I mean,
Was that sound
Say it
like a
again?
better idea? The waterfront track. You remember the waterfront track?
I think honestly, from what I'm seeing from the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here is to compensate the affected communities, okay, of this enterprise is what it's all about. And, we're trying to make some kind of, one shoe fits all, when maybe it is better that we do look more towards the waterfront communities that are affected, because it's essentially the waterfront communities that are going to be affected, because people inland don't get affected by dredge activity, correct? Am I wrong?
I mean, that waterfront track map was really simple. I mean, it's the waterfront of Baltimore County from the Harbor County line all the way down to the city. That was the water track map. that was-
Right, which I think included Aberdeen, if I'm not mistaken, or portions thereof.
it's not, I mean, it doesn't go
Well,
that far.
No, it doesn't.
The APG on our side of it, but we're not.
Yeah,
spending money on
yeah.
APG.
Josh, that makes me.
I also want to make one of record. This is not an exercise in excluding. What it is appropriately including, is what
Right,
this is about.
right. The idea behind this is to target the area where it should be
Yeah.
going and not where it shouldn't be.
Right.
So can I make a suggestion? So, the first topic here was map first criteria. If we want to go with the map, maybe we vote on that. And I can bring back the waterfront map and the other map that's focused just on Armadillo Island for consideration at the next meeting, but I want to make sure everyone has it.
I think it's a good suggestion.
It's just based on if we're gonna use a mapping system or a criteria system.
Because if you took the radius, you could have a project pretty far inland.
You're only up to Bel Air Road with the Herring Run. I mean, and
This is what I'm afraid of, is that we disperse the area so great that,
and the local,
It gets blurred down.
we're going to
Right.
get nothing. It's going to be so
Right.
diluted.
so we're trying to strike a balance here.
And from what I've heard from you guys, like, there's more of a focus on waterfront areas given the nature of.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, it's because of,
It's
I mean-
your backyard. And that's it.
Let me-
It's our
let me change-
backyard.
Let me change my motion to fit what Samir was saying there. Make a motion that we go off of a map versus a criteria.
yeah, I'll go with that. I second
We
that.
haven't established a map or anything, that we go off a map versus.
We haven't decided what map. We're just saying we're going off of a graphic description. Okay.
Is there a second?
I got a second right here.
Okay, Frank? Fran? Gloria? Scott, yes. Paul, yes. Pam, yes. Okay, unanimous.
Bring your maps next time.
It's just the reality check.
I'm just better with pictures. I'm sorry.
Reality check here. Reality check is if we're giving the autonomy, let's say to the fifth district, to make a decision in terms of the project. They have a lot of autonomy where those projects are going to be.
correct.
So in some
Well,
way,
yeah,
they could say, wait a second, we can make it based on what we feel.
That's why the map's good.
It sounds like the way to go is the waterfront
Okay,
track,
yeah.
though.
Makes sense.
I agree with that.
Just put us south and north.
So there's a check and a balance.
Is that 3 votes we got done tonight? I lost count.
All right, we're gonna get something done tonight.
So,
We need to look at the criteria.
yeah, we're doing that.
We're good.
Yeah, I like the cherries.
Okay. So next item that we have on the agenda is payment schedule. So we've had some discussions with this group individually and Aaron, we've had some discussions just about like how that would look. The concept right now that I put into text is essentially mirroring the proposed placement schedule that you've worked out with DNR. And it would be a 3-year period. The first payment would be due within 90 days of MDE approval, and there'd be 2 subsequent annual payments after that to complete payment. That's how I've got it set up. Right now, at least the contemplation is that those are equal payments. But I'll, open that up to discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that it's 50% first payment and 25 subsequent payment.
Could you restate that a little louder?
That the three payments, the first payment is due within 90 days would be 50%.
So it'd be 50 and 25 and 25?
25.
Yep, that makes sense, because if we do, get the dredging, the dike's only gonna be open for so long, so if we start this dredging through our, waterways here, we gotta get moving on that while the dike's open, was once it's closed, I don't think we can get back in there.
Well, not only that, I think within a year or so, the projects could be ready. And so we
Yes.
need the majority of them on the front, I would think. And to me, it's somewhat arbitrary, 30 is somewhat arbitrary.
I think that's fair.
So there's a.
Based off of a 3-year schedule.
Yeah.
And who guarantees the 3 years? In other words, it doesn't happen in 3 years. I don't know, I don't know, something happens.
The payment schedule would be in the agreement that's signed by Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, it was contemplated, even with legislation, there's a per cubic yard kind of payment. If you break it down, cubic yard. So the payment schedule, we would anticipate that the screw trees following the cubic yard placement. If we, for example, let's say we place a larger amount in year one, it's a different number than maybe year two, because it's a lesser amount, and then maybe a larger amount than in year three. So it may not be as even, but it was the way that we were looking at it as far as legislation, because it's based on per cubic yard placement. It's the use of the facility on a per cubic yard basis. So that's where that it's in essence a tipping fee, right? From the way that.
How would you calculate the yardage?
That's what I want to know.
Pardon me?
How do you calculate the yardage? Because he already said it's double as you're doing it, then it shrinks down the water. I don't know how you calculate that.
Yeah, the backyard.
So at the time of placement, we're.
So just for some dredging experience for some dredging history, TPA is going to do a bathymetric survey, just like you guys are familiar with, the 860 feet here, 8 feet here. They're going to do that, then they're going to come in with dredge, and they're going to dig out the mud, they're going to place them on a scale. At the end of that, they're going to do another survey, and that's how they pay the dredge, that based upon that survey. So they know, they can calculate the volume of what was dredged. So it's called the payment plan for the dredgers and all that stuff. And they're going to know exactly what the volume is. And from that, because we won't know, like you said, bulk volume, we won't know what that is when it comes into the Holland. We'll know from what the dredgers say in the placement. So that's how that's coming.
This is a well-established practice. Cox Creek takes a bill, that's how.
Yeah.
For contractors. This isn't a contract for contractors, it's a contractor for nitwits like me that don't understand all that stuff. So I think we should get 3 payments. They got plenty of money, they can handle it. I don't think it should be attached to anything they're doing. I think it should be attached to the sum of money that needs to be paid out. Any discussion on that one?
No, I agree with you.
Aaron?
I mean, it is.
Are there limitations on how it can be paid out?
I mean-
TPA's part?
I mean, I think that, again, the way we're phasing the cost of the project is based on how we place the material. So, I mean, there is costly money. So that is all factored in when we do a project with the scale that runs over so many period. There's, it's not just one big lump sum that sets in to be able to fund the project. It's cost of money over time. So that's how we look at it from a business. It's that cost of money over time.
And I understand that, but I don't make my part payment based on my mileage every month, okay, or year, okay? I make it installments, it's a contract. We do it that way. We know what we're getting. They know what they're getting. We're not moving anywhere. I don't see what the inconvenience is. 3 payments over 3 years, equal payments. He likes to go, what, 50%? I mean, vote on that. I mean, I'm cool with 1/3. He wants to go 50, 25, 25. we got a guy here that's gonna do $1 billion+ project. They're gonna make $1.5 billion in revenue every year. I don't think this amount of money is a major setback, okay, in their bank account or their financiers, because they got sovereign financing going on here. So let's talk, realistically here.
Scott, I think what Paul's saying is this would get the show.
No, I'm not disagreeing with
This
Paul.
could,
I'm just
this
saying
could
you
get
wanna
the
do
show
three,
on
wanna
the
go 50,
road
25,
because we've got a ways to go.
Because I'll go with
And-
Paul. To me, it's all the same.
And we're gonna have permitting and we have to go to our community, see what they need to be done. And I think it would help, get the show on the road.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm down with Paul. Paul says 50, doesn't matter to me. 30, to me, what is it, 15% difference between 33 and 50? It's no money. It's no big deal. It's the difference between 35 cents and 50 cents.
17%.
Paul, was that, did you make the
Yeah, I
motion?
made the motion that
Okay.
the three payments, the first payment would be 50% of the total cost, of the total payments.
Okay, so Frank's seconding. Okay, so motion is.
So restate the motion, please.
So I motion that the initial payment due within 90 days would be 50% of the amount, total amount.
Okay.
The agreed amount, okay, for the CBA.
Correct.
All right. And then two subsequent payments of 25% and 25%. Okay.
Thank you.
And Frank seconded. Okay, so take to a vote.
Yes.
Frank?
Okay.
Fran, Gloria,
Okay.
Scott, Paul, Sam. Gosh, interesting.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. That's the way.
So, and I do want to make sure we have time for public comment. We're at 7:55. I think we have the room until 8:30. The last item on the agenda is the sum of money, which we talked about a bit last meeting.
I make a motion to table that subject until we have more information to deliberate with. I'm getting information today from various agencies. I'm expecting or hoping additional information. Also, we really don't know exactly all the numbers, okay? Because obviously we haven't arrived, okay, with what the DNR and all these other, okay, stakeholders have as far as the total amount of the money. Does that make any sense? Did I make any sense when I said that?
Can DPA give us a criteria for how they came up with that number?
I'm sorry.
The 40 million and how you came up with the summer money.
Your offer, how
Sure,
did you come up with your
sure.
offer?
Absolutely. Sum of money came up with basically what is our savings from the placement. If you take just raw math on the use of an MTA facility and their tipping fee times 4.2 million cubic yards, we get close to $100 million dollars there. So right now, we're still negotiating with the state, but our placement costs, total placement costs, money that we're going to be putting into the project, money that we'll have to pay MES and DNR. You're looking at, that's about a $50 million figure. And then you add $40 million on top of that, with the CBA, that's 90 million. In our agreement with MPA, with MES and DNR, we're taking on the risk of funding, of backstopping the restoration of the island. One of the initial proposals that came over from DNR and an MES state suggested that could be around $30 million. So that was something we negotiated out in our conversations and said, let's put a backstop in after the state fulfills its commitment of its $47 million. And I think we believe that and this goes back to Joe Corcoran's point, we believe if we place material based on a plan, and we do it constructively in coordination with the end goal habitat in mind, we can reduce those costs. So, that is a risk we're having to take on with that. The other factors that are there, and that's just the placement factor, when we look at this, this is a much larger project. So there are other force factors that are kind of hitting this project as we speak, from when we announced it 2 years ago. Now, President Biden announced a 25% tariff on some of the material we're going to be coming from overseas to be able to build this terminal. That added 25 million to our, right off the bat in 2 years to that project. In addition to all the other costs of inflationary numbers that were originally looked at when we signed the agreement with our JV partner. So we're having to manage costs of this major project on these other ends. This is a piece of that cost.
This is all in comparison to building a containment site out at Coke Point or around that vicinity of,
They're very similar. They're very similar on costs.
What would be the cost?
did we get a breakdown, like, you know, on that, of how that number got created? Because are you saying that it would cost 100 million to build the containment site then at Spears Point?
I can give you the breakdown of that cost of the, so there's a couple options that we're looking at. We have the 100-acre DMCL. That was option one that we've been strongly encouraged on. So option two is the other placement options that it's been going. We have ocean disposal costs. We've got upland scenario. We have slip and fill on the west side of Coke Point, and those costs. Right now, you know, we're managing what those costs would be, but we're looking at Hart Miller Island as a facility that could ensure the execution of the project. The other factors, while they may be, if they could be cheaper, that has a lot of risk to it. This has a lot less risk to it.
That's why I think we should be getting $80 million.
By the way,
instead
more
of 40.
expensive, that has a lot more risk.
And the reason why it's supply and demand,
It's not.
we're going to ensure that this project will finish. That's assurance. It's out of his mouth. This will assure the project will be finished. The other avenue has considerable risk. What we're saying is if we get $80 million, okay, that's kind of like supply and demand. It's how the country works with capitalism. And what we're saying is we're going to supply you, okay, our support in lieu of $80 million so that we can get benefits for our communities. Does that sound foreign to you as a businessman? I take it as a no. I think $80 million is my number.
Aaron, to understand your estimated cost to build a Coke Point bike, let's call it $100 million.
Right.
The last meeting, we said 115.
It's around that.
It took Hart Miller, I got figure of 300 back in 1982. Just,
And that depends on, right now, as we characterize material, how that material would be placed. So those numbers are still very fluid.
that's just the build design.
That's building the dikes.
And that's a figure in 2002, I think. So factor in inflation, let's look at that.
Late 70s, early 80s money.
I'm factoring in the study that they had where they're going to do $1.54 billion a year in revenue over the next umpteen million years. This is a one-up deal we're going to get. There's no second chance. They ain't coming back to this ever again. It's grab all the gusto that you can get, okay? Pass out the Schlitz.
I guess that's.
And if it doesn't work, I suggest, we go back to our communities and say, this is what we got. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
That figures tax revenue to the tax and economic generation to the state. That's that revenue, the money.
I stand corrected. They're not going to do $1.5 billion a
It's a
year.
good project. It's a wonderful project. A wonderful project.
But that's a number we looked at, we had the MPA facilities at total capacity. That's what MPA, that's what they cost. For them to build their dikes and do their facility management, it's right around the same cost.
Well, when it comes to the cost, the expectation of Hart Miller, we've been very clear, very transparent. It's $50 million to Hart Miller Island. So I make a motion that whatever amount is 50% up to $5
So
I'm counter offering. He said 40, I say 80.
I think there's a motion initially.
Was Scott, yours was a motion?
No,
80
I'm sorry,
million.
I'm sorry. You made a motion.
You know,
Do I got a second?
I think you moved to table the discussion first. so-
Okay, well then table it. I thought that, okay, I'll table it.
Actually, I second.
so the motion is to table the discussion.
That's table.
And
Yeah.
Paul, the second is put in the second. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes.
That'll give us greater time to examine the numbers.
Right.
Oh, Janet, one question. Richard, with the agreement that you'll be reaching hopefully soon with Trade Point, would that be made public
Everything,
to COC?
everything that we do. So,
Will we have to get a FOIA to get the information, or will you give it to us freely?
I believe, it's a state contract, it'll be, sort of keeping it tight, reasonably.
Okay.
However, I will
Okay,
tell
well,
you,
if we're tabling it, we can have further discussions, correct?
We have a motion to table it. We have it seconded. Call the vote.
Okay, call it, okay.
That question can I answer?
Frank said yes already. Brian?
We're tabling my motion.
For now, okay,
Yeah.
just for now, okay, yes,
Fran? Gloria?
Table.
Scott? Paul?
Thanks.
Tim? Josh? Unanimous table. For the time being.
Now, to finish the point about information.
Which it's tabled.
We're done,
moving
we're
on.
done the vote. Can we go back to the point that Paul was making about information?
My question was answered. It's public.
It is
It's
answered?
public. It's public.
all the
Okay.
information, the governor's office will be provided, so I can't speak on behalf.
Right.
Thank you.
And we need to leave this last 30 minutes for the public before we get kicked out.
Yeah, and I did reserve 10 minutes for open dialogue, really to just discuss whether or not we need another meeting. We do, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe two,
It's tabled.
maybe two.
So we'll
It's
schedule
tabled,
another
discussion.
in 2 weeks. Okay, I think we can go into public comment.
Sure.
We have.
Okay.
Here.
There.
Thank you. No. Do me a favor, before you speak, try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes. And please announce your name and if you represent an organization, which organization.
And I can bring the microphone around. The first person signed up is Shannon Stallings.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Shannon Stallings. I'm the Chief Fire Officer, the Bowley's Quarters Volunteer Fire Department, and oversight of Marine Emergency Team 21, which is comprised of 35 specially trained response personnel, 2 fire rescue vessels, 3 shallow draft boats, 1 inflatable craft, and several land-based response and towing vehicles. The Community Volunteer Fire Department operates the largest marine emergency response team in the Upper Bay area. Met 21, as we call it, is one of the few teams north of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge that can make year-round emergency responses in any weather condition. Team personnel are trained for all worst-case scenarios that they may be faced with. Common responses includes vessel fires, collisions, hazardous materials incidents, medical emergencies, even inland rescue swimming operations. 2 of our rescue vessels can provide basic life support when staffed with EMTs are essentially ambulances on the water. Met 21 receives its distress calls through the Baltimore County 911 dispatch, direct from the United States Coast Guard, or through Marine Channel 16. Met 21's primary response area covers 90 square miles of the Upper Chesapeake Bay, an area larger than the entire city of Boston. This includes all of Baltimore County's waterfront communities, various popular boating locations, Hart Miller Island, Pools Island, and the channels leading to and from the Eastern Shore. Secondary responses include mutual aid requests by Hartford, Anne Arundel, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Cecil counties, as well as Baltimore City. The team often works with many commercial tow vessels in the area The highly trained personnel, as well as well-designed and maintained facilities and vessels, are a critical component to our success. The BQVFD is formally requesting that the Hart Miller Island Steering Committee allocate funding to improve water safety infrastructure and emergency response. Completing the park at the island will greatly increase the need for emergency resources and personnel. Funding will primarily be utilized to construct an annex on our new station, which is designed for groundbreaking within the next 2 years. Funding will primarily be used for the annex. It will serve as the headquarters for Marine Emergency Team 21, an aquatic rescue training facility, a rescue swimmer fitness center, and indoor storage for our response vessels to be ready to respond 365 days a year. No more winter storage. The BQVFD is looking to break ground on a new facility within the next 2 years. In addition, funding can be utilized in matching state grants received by the Waterway Improvement Fund, in replacing an aging rescue boat, and developing an easement for the CP Crane Park site for the installation of a public safety pier for emergency response vessels. The combined cost of improving the infrastructure to continue and improve our maritime response is in the area of $2.4 million. The BQVFD would like to thank the steering committee for their dedication to the waterfront communities and for allocating the community benefit funding to the appropriate projects to improve the safety of Baltimore County's waterways. For anybody who doesn't know of Marine Emergency Team 21, I am available for questions now or after. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, we have Joe Corcoran signed up. Okay, next is Kathy, so that works out well.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lambrow. I'm a resident of Essex, and actually Hart Miller's right around the corner from me. I'm also chair of the Conservation Committee of the Baltimore Bird Club. The Baltimore Bird Club has had a long-term involvement with Hart Miller Island, and our members, some of our members were on the original team that worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, DNR, Maryland Department of the Environment, Maryland Port Authority, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USDA, and the Chesapeake Bay Critical Area Commission in the design of the original South Cell Environmental Restoration Plan. We are intimately knowledgeable of the evolution of Hart Miller Island and the birds and other wildlife that it supports. Today, Hart Miller is classified as an important bird area by the National Audubon Society, which is the U.S. partner of BirdLife International. One of the features of being that important bird area is that such sites are identified for their high value to birds. These areas represent key sites for conservation and careful management decisions. We submitted our input back at the very beginning of this process on what we were looking for in the community benefits agreement. Our understanding at this moment in time is that none of our most important priorities have or will be addressed. Without these, the habitat in the South Cell will be completely obliterated by the dredge placement. Sorry, North Cell, thank you. Completely obliterated by the dredge placement if it was allowed to occur. This portion of the park will not return to its current state, which is still not finished for many years, maybe as long as 20, by the time everything settles and it's ready to be put into park. So unless accommodations can be made to provide for an agreeable level of habitat protection during the dredge placement and thereafter, we would urge you to vote against the community benefit agreement, which would then void the dredge placement by TPA. Consider the optics. You're allowing a privately owned company who will benefit greatly by this placement on state-owned land, rendering it useless for 20 years and destroying an important nesting, migratory, and safe wintering ground for tens of thousands of birds during this same period of time. The payment for such destruction should be at least commensurate with the harm that will be done, even if you could place a value on it. Thank you. Joe.
So you guys, I know you're very into it. Have you identified certain spots in the North Cell where you'd rather see preferred?
Yes,
So
about 100 acres.
700 acres. Something like that.
Maybe you can share that, if you would, Mark.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, okay.
Richard, could you comment on her claim of 20 years? I believe the lady mentioned that it would, what did you say, 20 years?
Could be 20 by the time, because the dredge has to settle, it has to be hard enough to work, to move the, shift the earth around to get it into a proper habitat.
Yes,
To build
you're saying that it will be useless for 20 years after the placement of the drugs. With the claim.
It will not, correct, it won't be.
So we know that the plan is at least 10. So we plan from its contract signed tomorrow and everything approved and everything, then it's about 2 years of mobilization, 3 years of filling material. And right now in the proposed negotiating contract, it's another 5 years of consolidation, dewatering, and all that. However, I will tell you that, right now, Citizen Advisory Committee just had a meeting back in the spring, and they're still putting material 3 to 6 feet down. So we know that since 2009, the Duke map 15 years, it's still not 100% compacted enough for creation of certain types of products that we would have. So we know that if we put material there, it's likely to have 10 to 15 years of, I guess, not consolidated enough to create a park. I can't expand beyond that because our current history only demonstrates 15. However, I can also say that's highly dependent upon what the environment does, what climate change does, what's the rain, what's the dewatering plan, what's the grain size of material that comes in. All that really dictates how fast and how well that material consolidates and decants. So without all that information, and frankly, without seeing it happen through time, that projecting that far in advance is a difficult task.
This is very experimental.
I wouldn't call it experimental. It's just, it depends upon what the environment does. I think of an experiment as we're changing the parameters, and we're not changing those parameters, and parameters are being changed by others that are larger than us.
How long have you been involved?
Approximately 30 years.
To point out just one other thing that you said there, that you say that we should not agree to any of this and stop it. At least I hope to point out that we're advisory to the council voting on this and the county executive. If we chose not to, which you're suggesting, they're going to go through anyway, having something like, we don't know there. We don't know there. We have contacts with the council. You're saying that you think that the council will not take this up if the steering committee just doesn't? No, they'll take it up, but they may not vote on it, or they vote on it, or change the vote to where they set it up, or then it has to be redone.
Maybe I can jump in here. So, I mean, the entire intent of us forming this steering committee was to ensure that we were hearing before we entered into the committee. So if I get the sense that the steering committee is against this, but, rest assured, I don't think if my boss or the county council have any inclination to shut something down, we would serve it.
You're really gonna throw that out there publicly right now? I just did.
Okay, can I go?
If you wanna throw it into our hands, you can throw it into our hands that way.
That's where we are.
That number just went up significantly there.
Yeah. Is this working now?
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
As it's set up now, that's what we're against. But there is ways to set it up so that we will be. And that is to get the dredge in there, maybe drier, so that, and maybe not have to put as much in there, so that wetlands, maybe 100 acres, will be protected during the process, so that it will take a lot less time for it to dewater, decant, and to be usable to be able to produce into a park. And we'd like to proceed in that manner. I know it's going to be extra costs and all that kind of stuff, but that's going to have to be worked out. We can use community benefit money to help with that, to make sure that those 100 acres are protected and to make sure that the dredge that goes in there is not going to take so long to be watered. Because from 2009, it's still not ready to be made into a park, so that's already 15 years, and it's going to be another 5, 30, 20 years right now. We start with putting more dredge in there now, especially by the slurry method, which is the wetter method, going to be what, another 20 years from now? I mean, that's just way too far for this to come around. We've been already waiting 15 years.
So what is the difference between the north cell and the south cell that prevents the birds from utilizing the south cell, which is already completed and being used as a recreational area for their usage as a habitat?
They are using the south side.
Well, what I'm saying.
But it's a different, but they're not.
Move over and.
Right. No, because it's the amount of birds that we're talking about. We're talking about tens of thousands of birds that we're talking about.
You're saying the south cell does not have the physical capacity.
Correct.
To take all these birds.
And it doesn't have the wetlands that the north cell has. And so there's a lot more habitat in the north cell that the south cell doesn't have. The south cell is fine, it's perfect, it's great. And we love that. We don't want that affected, by the way, because I've heard inklings that maybe some of the north cell dredge is gonna have to go down in there. We're gonna have to raise the water there, which could affect whatever wetlands are in there, but what we want is that. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just for clarification, I have not heard that, but I have heard the possibility of using some drainage from north cell to south cell, but that would not impact the habitat there. It would just be for moving water around.
And it wouldn't raise the.
At this moment in the plans, it would not be raising anything in south cell.
Okay, fair enough. Then
So you're proposing to save 100 acres of this wetland area, that's what you're proposing?
Yeah, or approximately whatever, yeah. Or in the north cell, just to, they can dike it all, where there's aqua dams that they can, where they fill up bags with, instead of sandbags, it'll be filled up with water or dredge.
And this mere 100 acres will be adequate? Or
We think so, yeah. I mean, yes, because the rest of the time, they will find other places, the other birds will find other places. But the particular birds that we're talking about nest there, they will be losing their nesting habitat. These are gallinules, rails, grebes, soras, marsh wrens. They will be losing their habitat, and they'll be losing it for 20 years.
We have a hard stop at 8:30. I want to make sure everyone has.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Anyway,
Let me make it clear, there are 100 acres set aside with solve your problem.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, that's good. And we want it in writing. We want to see, make sure all this is, because a lot of stuff is it's the talk. And that's what we think we're going to do, but it's got to all be in writing.
Yeah. Celmer?
Uncle Celmer, President of Productions of Union Association, part of Morale is part of our geographic board. Couple of things, Back River, Middle River, they're gonna be most impacted when and if the dike should be. Before they can guard the water along the temperature of what time. And so we care if they stuff, that we're gonna be the ones that suffer the most. And if that happens. So we approach your acidity map. Keep in mind, we're around here. The other thing is there will be funds available under the environmental impact statement for the dredge, code point dredge. So yeah, I can hear you talk about how you're doing the plan, how you're going to figure it out. Good. Good. Buckle down. So the reminder, I think it's part of less than also the Holly Southeast Community Gas Pollution Center, et cetera. There's one of the first 14 members of the Hart-Doyle, it was like the structure before and going. And then 27 is the Public Girl Captain, et cetera. So
My observation, in 2009, that was the cutoff. Maryland Port transferred it, that's why it's in DNR. It's a state park, all of it, not part of it, not half of it, not some of it, all of it. So the whole thing is, we are setting a precedent here. This will be national. Because this will be the first time that a state or a federal park has ever been in the history of the United States would ever be used for the deposition of third-party industrial waste disposal. That's a big issue nationwide. That's all.
Keith Taylor, first one, it's on the short side. I'm just curious, are we working on the Maryland Open Meetings Act for meetings? Okay, so, the next meeting, we should post a notice, we should post the agenda. We should, get a public announcement. We should have everyone that's, press, but there's only 16 people here. And that means, to me, that means the word's not getting out.
I can take that very quickly. So we do a webpage where we have posted, schedule.
The future, no, not all your future meetings are on there.
We just had a meeting tonight.
I've got a proposal for like state meetings that aren't even on there. There's supposed to be a focus meeting.
Yes,
There's another meeting that's not on there. It's not on the website.
we're finding the schedule, it's a fluid schedule, but we will post, we will communicate.
But if you post it, probably people don't see it ahead of time. They're
Yeah,
just
I
finding
mean, this,
out.
tonight's meeting has been posted, it's been August. So, but
Okay, what about that?
we just discussed having the next meeting, this meeting, so we will get it up.
So part of that is a compliance checklist for the Maryland meetings. So we need to call that. By the way, if you split 80 million in 3 years, it's 26.666. So right away, that tells you right away it's a bad omen. By the way, Franklin Atlantic, you grow, we grow. 80 million sounds good to me, right? Plus a 1% profit of the port per year. Port brings in 40 million, we get 1% of it. And that 1% will take care of all the other projects that are going to go in, that's going to start to pay. By the way, this rolled up on the shoreline. This is from the 2011 risk assessment from the NDE. And they said not to eat the crabs nor the fish 5 miles in circumference of Corcoran. It's posted everywhere. This rolled up on shore after storm. So there's a QR code here too, if you want to check that out.
Thanks. So I think you furnished the committee with a copy of your, hey,
The check committee.
yeah, the check. There's your copy of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm new to all this and I'm just a resident, but I hear the discussion about the benefit. I want to know where the committee is for the detrimental impact of what's happening. Where is that committee? And where, when you're talking about money, where's the money to mitigate any catastrophes or damages that happen because of this project? That's my question. Does anybody have an answer for that?
I'll stab at it. I think there's insurances that cover all these operations, ma'am. Everything is covered by insurances. So that there is a mishap or anything, I believe that it's an insurance claim to cover it.
So when a barge overturns in Old Road Bay and we're damaged for years and years and years, what's the mitigation strategy for that?
I can't speak for that. I'm only speaking to where possibly the funds would come from. I'm sure it'd be like an emergency fund that would address it immediately, okay, with all the resources to come to aid that community in distress. But I think once it all settles out, it probably wind up in the courts between the insurance companies, liability, just like when they crashed into the bridge. Who's going to cover that? I mean, we don't know because it's in the courts for one path. So when you ask these kind of questions, it's very complex. And I appreciate it. I think what you're asking more so is if an incident occurs, okay, will there be in place, okay, the proper agencies to address that immediately?
But is there a steering committee like this that's looking at the advantage of this program to look at what could be potentially the problems with it.
I,
Or are we past that
I
already?
think I can help with that. So, again, from based on legislation, HB 343 passed legislative session. Review of the environmental impacts and final arbiter of whether or not placements allowed to occur at Hartwell Island is done by State Department of Natural Resources. Is the Maryland Department of the Environment. So they're the regulatory body for environmental impacts throughout the state. That's the body that will ultimately decide whether or not we go forward. And I don't know, at a trade point or anyone's talking about the environmental testing or that process. We did lay that out during the first meeting. There's a lengthy environmental process with community engagement.
So Mayor, we're working with the DNR, MTA, and MES. They are the experts. There's going to be an extremely thorough, comprehensive review of the north cell to ensure that it is structurally stable. And there will be ongoing monitoring of the cell and the monitoring wells and surface water around the island. Of course, this is all going to be done through the tidal wetlands permitting process that is overseen by both the MDE and the Bureau of Public Works.
So can I add to that real quick? So say we get a hurricane and we get 30 inches of rain. Does anybody know if the north cell is going to hold that dredge material?
That's part of what gets evaluated.
There are dams, those dikes qualify as dams. And those dikes have to pass a dam safety permit or a dam safety review, I believe annually. But that's an MDE concern. I can't speak 100% for that, but I do know that they pass a inspection annually. So, and we need to keep a freeboard, which most of you guys know what freeboard is, but the top of the dike down to where the level is, that is commensurate with the amount of rain that is expected. And I don't know what the normal storm is, whether it's a 100-year storm or a 10-year storm, but it is, there are securities for that.
If I share, then that is a role to see. No. Is it any plan or I invite everyone to be part of this thing. I hear what people are saying. Okay, but it's all something involving holding people feet to the fire. Last 35 years, that's not it occurs tomorrow. Even if there's no more dread, that risk is not so much for the whole event. And the other options would be.
Well, that sign floated up on my property.
I shared your concern to River 30. I shared your concern. Yeah. Continue to share your concern. And respond to it. Do the best that we can. Make sure we. But just because we're here to negotiate, doesn't mean.
And it's a done deal.
Done deal.
Well, I'm sorry, you can like 30 and then I just did it there before, so we could get out of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we just say, we want to thank Kenwood and Andrew for setting all this up so that.
Do we have like a, we got a routine or something, so like,